Hey guys, it's Debbie Potts, and I've had a lot of questions lately about what is metabolic flexibility, what is metabolic efficiency, what is your metabolic efficiency point, and how do we test our metabolism? As an aging athlete, as a female trying to lose weight, for those that are endurance athletes trying to improve performance, and those who are just plain old health optimizers, which should be everybody who wants to improve how they age, working on longevity. What we want to do is test and not guess. So I love to test people's metabolism, obviously, I talk about it all the time, resting metabolism and your exercise metabolism. And we'll go over what that entails. And then metabolic health markers, looking at your insulin, looking at APOB, LP little a, triglycerides, CRP, your thyroid panel, which is really what I like to look at is your free T3 and free T4, liver markers, looking at vitamin D, all sorts of different blood chemistry panel that you probably don't get from your doctor. Really sad to say, but I cannot get doctors to test insulin unless you are type 2 diabetic. What's the point of getting insulin tested in advance? So we are not struggling with pre-diabetes. It's all preventative. And sadly, our insurance companies don't pay for those labs. So we can do Ulta labs, there's Own Your Own labs, there's DHA or something like that. Different ones you can go order labs online or through a practitioner. As Rupa Health, you can order labs. Go get a phlebotomist, come to your house and get the lab test done, or go to a LabCorp. Also, I like to do a GI test as well as Genova Diagnostics or GI Map. There's BioMFX. There's different ones to look at. Organic acids test, an oats test, and a Dutch test. And then sometimes we do benefit from a food sensitivity test because those foods you're reactive to are just temporarily inflammatory to you. But once we remove those foods for 90 days, heal and seal and correct the gut issues and fix that leaky gut, we can reintroduce those foods later on or retest. So as a health investigator, I'm an FDN practitioner. I combine the functional lab testing investigation with a nutritional therapy practitioner training I've had of looking at our foundations, working on what we're eating, how we are eating, how are you digesting and breaking down those foods? Are they nutrient dense foods? And working on balancing your blood sugar, working on what we call the PALs, your pancreas, adrenal, and liver function all need to be working together, as well as your gut health and your mineral balancing. So there's a lot of things we look at, but also as a personal trainer forever and a coach, putting all this together to figure out how to be metabolically healthy as we age. So the focus, I said, is on metabolic efficiency and metabolic flexibility. So I just thought of that because I had this blog from Levels Health came in today. What is metabolic flexibility? Just to review, if we think we have glucose fuel tank and a fat fuel tank, we want to figure out how to get our body to prefer the fat fuel tank over the carbohydrate fuel tank, and working on how to become more metabolically efficient is what we can test in our metabolism test I do with PNOE equipment. And then metabolic flexibility is what we can do during exercise and resting tests too, to see, are you shifting to carbohydrates as a backup fuel tank when you are needing to use carbohydrates for a quick burning fuel. So for years I've talked about this, 20 years I think now, and we want to look at the theory, the analogy of a fire. And to get that fire, if you're building a fire, you're out camping, what wood do you want to put in that fire to get it starting quickly? And then how do you keep your fire burning for the evening? So say you want 2-3 hour fire burning. We got the big fat logs, they're slow burning, but to get the fire started, we need some small pieces of wood, kindling. So Metabolic flexibility, there's an article in here from Levels. During times of abundance, when carbohydrate-rich foods are plentiful, the body functions primarily glucose burning. If you are metabolically healthy, the glucose you ate either gets delivered from your blood into your body's cells and used for energy and gets stored as glycogen. When you're circulating and blood glucose levels are running low during fasting carbohydrate restriction, your body switches to primarily fat burning mode. A person with good metabolic flexibility would burn glucose when consuming glucose and burn fat when they consume fat or when their glucose levels are running low due to fasting. And the article continues on talking about the body's energy supply is a fuel tank, as I just talked about there. They say at the top of the fuel tank, the glucose is circulating in the blood, and the middle is the glycogen and the glucose stored in your muscles and livers. At the bottom of the tank, you can see here is fat. And I'm going to make that smaller. Now, your body taps into this fuel tank for energy. The tank is depleted from the top down. So during fasting or carb restriction, your body burns through excess circulating blood glucose, then it's stored glycogen, and then into the stored body fat. It doesn't entirely deplete each source. Your body will maintain a minimum stable to help with the glucose, but instead, the body shifts the balance of sources. When you eat a high carb meal, your blood sugar rises quickly. The glucose is taken up by the cells to be used and stored as easy access glycogen, and any excess is converted to fat or long-term storage. So go ahead, you can read this article from Levels Health about metabolic flexibility, and you can learn more about ketones and the brain health and what to test. And so there's a good information on here, testing your glucose, testing your ketones, and really figuring out, am I eating the right foods for my body? Am I having a consistent blood sugar rise and fall, this rhythm? And what if I did fasting? And we have to talk about fasting differently for those that are active female athletes and athletes in general. So we want to stick to a 12-hour dinner to breakfast is normal, but working on the metabolic shift, metabolic fuel switches. So it goes into a little bit more on this article from Levels. Now, metabolic efficiency, I wrote, and a little bit more from this podcast I just recorded with Bob Seabehor. And when we do metabolism testing, we're identifying your zone 2 you hear about, right? Zone 2 is your long sustained distance where you're burning primarily fat. It's oxidative phosphorylation, and here we're using fat and some glycolysis or glucose through pyruvate goes into the Krebs cycle, or fatty acids go through beta oxidation. The fatty acids are creating lots of ATP, and glucose is just creating a little bit of ATP. So when we are going slower, a lower intensity, we have enough time to have this oxidative phosphorylation that we're creating energy to sustain that workout, that intensity with fat oxidation. So you're burning fat for fuel. Now, if you start to go a little bit faster, a little higher intensity, your watts or your running speed or your what else are you doing? Swimming faster. You are starting to shift to more glucose for fuel. And then we switch to high intensities. Let's say it's like a 15-second intensity. We're doing creatine phosphate, or it's called CRP, or creatine phosphagen system. There's different names for it, but that's going to be your high power. So we have, when we do PNOE testing, 5 zones. So we like to break that up into those zones and finding what your exercise report is going to be helping us figure out those 5 zones. So let me pull up a sample report and look at this longevity marker. How efficient are you burning fat at rest? And then we're going to talk about how efficient are you burning fat and carbohydrates at different exercise intensities. So as you train, we want to identify where you are right now, because that will change where you're burning the most fat. And yes, I use DuckDuckGo. I just switched to making sure I use what's this called? DuckDuckGo, whatever, because I keep getting that's viruses on my computer. So safe space when you search the web. Active metabolism test. So we're going to look at a nice report when you do your metabolism testing. We'll talk about metabolic efficiency, but we're getting this report back. It's 25 pages long or so. This is a difference of PNOE metabolism testing versus someone doing a VO2 max test. And I know they're popular around here in San Diego. There's exercise physiologist that does an amazing job in identifying your VO2 max and your metabolic efficiency point. But this we're doing a little bit more. We're looking at your gut health, posture, cell health, lung health, and mental health and heart health. When we do the report or test, you get this report to see what area to perform your best in life and sports, what area is holding you back? What do we need to do more of? And so this sample report can show us where that person had more limitations. Then we can figure out their workout program, how they should train, and even fuel to improve their performance. Now, the resting metabolism report will get this markers for your metabolism. How many calories are you burning at rest? And with exercise, various intensity levels will know how much fuel source you're burning in the exercise test. But the resting test is 10 to 15 minutes being still, being fully rested as much as you can. Are you efficient at burning fat when you're resting? That's where we want to look at. We should be burning fat as our primary fuel source. Heart fitness is a measure of your heart rate variability, the strength of your nervous system. LF to HF, I've talked about. Low frequency to high frequency is low frequency is going to be a measurement of your sympathetic nervous system, and your high frequency is your parasympathetic nervous system. So that will give us a score of your stress level and heart health with heart rate variability testing and the heart fitness marker. So the first three markers are all about your metabolism and fat burn. And then the heart fitness is your heart rate variability with a heart rate strap. We're measuring that data. And then there's three markers that are about the other half of this test, analyzing your breath. So the 10, 15 minutes, we are analyzing what you're breathing in, what you're breathing out, how much oxygen into carbon dioxide, but we're also measuring your lung fitness. How much volume of oxygen are you taking out? How is your breathing frequency? How well are you breathing, or do you have struggle to get a full breath in? These are done while you're lying still. So we should see some people might need a posture strength work in their back. Maybe they're rounded over, so they have a harder time breathing. So half of the PNOE test is metabolism, and the other half is measure of your breathing. Now, we also can measure metabolic disease risk, and we look at different markers here and then figure out how to improve it. That is what sets us apart doing the metabolism testing with PNOE. I'm going to look at a lot more and correlate that if people do one of my packages. It can include blood chemistry panel and your food log and exercise log. So I get to know, what are you doing now? And here's what's happening. Here's the result of what you're currently doing. What are we not doing enough? And then figure out, working together, what you can do to make these markers better. So going back to metabolic efficiency, exercising, we should be burning mostly fat at lower intensities. As we increase your intensity as you exercise, the fuel source switches. So when someone asks me, should I be burning fat and what should I be eating before workout, during, and after, we're going to look at what fuel source are you burning, and then looking at what have you been eating beforehand. How long has it been since you ate? Women, we can track it by your cycle, and really looking at how metabolically efficient you are at rest and during exercise. Now, Bob Siebehor taught me years ago. I met him in 2009. I did his metabolic efficiency specialist program, and I love his information and just reading his new book, or his old book, but rewritten, some new additions in the Metabolic Efficiency Training Program, talking about the MET. What is that? Metabolic efficiency training is what we're going to go into a little bit more in the next month on the podcast, and talking about what is a metabolic efficiency specialist. I will share the link from Bob Siebelhor as we will get a discount link. So listen to my podcast with Bob, and unedited version is on YouTube, and then the audio version will be out in January. So with all this together, we're going to measure metabolism, your metabolic rate measurement, which is how many calories you can burn at rest. Make sure you come to the test rested. Figure out how many calories you need a day, maybe adjusting your nutrients, protein, carbs, and fat. If you're trying to lose weight or gain weight, usually, I hate the word weight loss, but weight management is really looking at how well is your metabolic health. Do we need to add more protein and add more strength training to speed up your metabolism so we're losing fat weight and not losing muscle? Because we talked a lot on this podcast channel last few months about anabolic resistance and how it's harder as we age to fight that battle of losing muscle and slower metabolism. So we talk about metabolic efficiency, metabolic dysfunction, how to improve your workout recovery, how to improve your endurance. And looking back at this test, the ability to switch between fat and carbs to fuel allows you to train longer distance without a lot of oxidative stress in that zone 2 where you're burning mostly fat. And then if you go higher heart rate, if you're going up a hill, how well do you come back down to going from carb burning back to fat? So we can work on that in a test and work on making sure you're recovering from your workout so you're not too stressed out. We hear about the VO2 max for longevity. That is important, but we want to know how to train and supplement and lifestyle habits and nutrition to improve your VO2 max for the next time we do your test. So remember, VO2 is a snapshot of your endurance potential, but your longevity marker, but it's more a number. We want to see, did we do everything correct in your training program in the next 3 months so we can see that number increase next time we test. So it's a baseline data we're collecting, but it's not telling us really how to train, just a little bit. Maybe the VO2 max is a number, say it's 44 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram per minute, but it is really, I think, more important to know what your training zones are and how to improve that fat burning in your zone 2 and how to train in your zone 4 or zone 5, which is best for you. So we want to look at your blood chemistry panel, looking at your metabolism at rest and metabolism during exercise, and then working on your nutrition. So we want to figure out your zone 2 is your peak fat burning zone. The top of your zone 2 is a metabolic efficiency point. Bob Siebelhor talks about in the video interview we did. Where does carbs go up and the fat usage goes down? And then we can figure out if you are doing certain higher intensity workouts, how to fuel in and around that workout, post-workout. Should you do it fasted? Depends what the workout intensity is, but you might learn more about improving your performance. Having a little bit of fuel pre-workout, if you're doing a harder workout, can be beneficial. Now, we've done a ton of podcasts on fasted exercise, or should you do a fed workout? And that's where I think it depends on your intensity. And if you want to improve performance, which is why you're probably doing interval training, you want to probably fuel for that. Now, we want to really focus on reducing this oxidative stress. And I think exercise in itself is challenging on our body, but we want to train the body to use fat for fuel, and that will help us reduce the amount of oxidative stress and train in the right training zones, but know when we can improve that recovery and repair and all that. So if you want to learn about the testing, we've got the weight loss package, the performance package, and then all of it together is longevity package. And we can add on training in there. So if you want to know more about how to get your metabolism tested, and in this report, you get all these recommendations that we go over and pick what's right for you based on where you are in your journey. How many calories do you need a day? A lot of people aren't eating enough and they're not eating enough protein. And then when you days you do work out versus not work out, are you changing your calorie intake, right? You shouldn't be eating the same amount. I do think you should eat the same amount of protein because your rest days are when you're actually repairing. But this is where we can get this data and figure out what's best for you. Now, your exercise test, we get all this report here: aerobic health, cardiovascular fitness, high intensity performance. How well do you recovery post high intensity? So after we do your peak VO2, we'll measure 2.5 minute recovery marker. How well do you burn fat? Where is that zone 2? How high does it go? And there's some other breathing markers here. Again, remember, we're doing metabolism and a breath analysis. Now, if we scroll down, this again is a sample report. We'll get all these markers and then it'll explain what it is, and we go over how to improve it. So here's how it's measured. All right, what is the best way for this sample report? Aerobic health is the limitation. What are you not doing? What are you doing now? And what could we do differently to improve that? Right? So that's what we'll look at and pick, not all of it, but figure out what do we need to prioritize and figure out how to improve that marker. So this person probably does a lot of high intensity workout and not a lot of zone 2. So you can tell their aerobic health, their cardiovascular health, that might be some interval training incorrectly, but to improve this is interval training, high intensity zone 4, but making sure they're coming down to zone 1 if they're working hard enough and going into what is high intensity. So that's what we do when we do our follow-up call post-test, and we looked at what do we need to work on. Okay, and the end of this report is a big spreadsheet of your heart rate zone. So we scroll down, we can figure out, okay, how much strength training do you need a week, interval training a week, cardio training? What does that look like for you as a unique individual? What are short intervals, medium, long? What's your cardio supposed to look like? What's your strength training? What do we need to do? So this is where I customize workout program. And then your training zones, we figure out 5 zones. Zones 1 is recovery. Zone 2 enhances fat burning efficiency. Cellular health improves recovery capacity. Heart fitness is improved in zone 3. Zone 4, increased fatigue threshold, increases your non-oxidative threshold, improves your VO2 max. And then your zone 5 is going to be your sprint interval training to improve your fat burning efficiency, cellular health, increase fatigue threshold, because the fat burning efficiency is more due to the mitochondria, I think, because you're not obviously burning fat up to zone 5, but post-workout, the epoch. And then how many calories, the fat to carb burn percentage, and calories in each zone is estimated. Then we retest. So that's what we're doing in our metabolism testing. So you can check that out on the website, wpotts.net, and look at testing your glucose. I'm just testing out a new company, looking at ketones and glucose and lactate. So super fun. And I hope you can find someone near you to do metabolism testing. Great to do your off season if you're an athlete. Anytime if you're struggling to lose weight, what you're doing is not working. You're trying to do all the right things, but you're not getting those results that you are striving for. So that's what I do. Health investigator, test and not guess. Look at how is your metabolism working now? How do we need to improve it if it's not working? And let's identify those missing pieces of your puzzle to figure out what is the best plan for you. And that's different for everyone. So we don't want to say everyone needs 80% zone 2, 20% HIIT training. What is HIIT training for you? Most people do it wrong. And most people are not in zone 2. So that area in itself will help figure out more personalization of your training zones. Nutrition. How should you eat? When should you eat? How do we time your nutrition around your exercise? And then if you're trying to lose weight, well, actually, you might want to do less cardio and more time lifting heavy weights and doing some sprint interval training that are 10, 20 seconds, and adding some safe jump training. And then prioritizing that protein, hitting that protein goal, spread out throughout the day, getting that 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight is my simple math to figure out your protein macros. Women, we need more than the 20, 30 grams. We need to get 40, 50 grams to stimulate that muscle protein synthesis as we get older. So that's what we need to figure out. Top of all that, we can dive into a little bit deeper, look at your microbiome, look at your food sensitivities, look at your blood chemistry, inflammation markers, look at your thyroid panel, look at your Dutch test, your hormones. So you've got a lot to work on. Don't wait until you're struggling. Don't wait until you have fatigue. Get on top of it. We want to be health optimizers. Get all this investigation done before you are struggling. So strive to thrive as you age. Don't wait until you're struggling, because it is so much harder and takes so much longer to get better. So I'd rather you do this type of testing quarterly with the PNOE testing every 6 months, do the lab testing, put a little savings account aside if it's, it is expensive to do lab. A gut test costs like $400. So we need to plan in advance and save some money, stop eating out as much or getting coffee out, and just put money aside and have your health savings bank account. So let me know if you have questions. Metabolic efficiency point, talking to Bob Siebehor on our video about that subject. Metabolic flexibility, we've done a lot on. And then how to improve your metabolism. If you're not losing weight with what you're doing now, we want to look at how can I get my metabolism higher? Yeah, I'm getting older, my metabolism slows down, but that's a bunch of garbage, because it doesn't have to slow down if you don't embrace the aging process and change how you fuel, train, and perform in life every day. So we need to do things a little differently than we did 10 years ago. All right. So lifting heavy weights, prioritizing protein in each meal, animal-based ideally, plant-based doesn't really work as well, and getting your sleep hygiene routine, because if we don't get our sleep, everything else gets disrupted. And if we're chronically stressed out and have chronic external stressors, as well as hidden sources of chronic stress inside, we don't know about unless we do testing, that's going to impact everything as well. So sleep, stress management, nutrition, exercise, movement throughout the day, happiness, gratitude, play, hydrating with getting our minerals in through our water, gut health, digestion. That's what we do in my program called the Holistic Method. So let's work on the whole you from the inside out to thrive as we age. So don't wait until you're broken to get help. Thanks for listening. Let me know your questions for next solo video, and share this channel with someone that might be struggling, trying to figure out how to fuel, train to perform their best in life and sports, right? Doesn't matter what race you're doing, it's a race of life, endurance for life.